and welcome to another episode of Chris Sees the Internet. My name is KILLcRey. You can call me Chris. Yo, this week we are speaking to artist, rapper, writer, bar spitter, thought provoker, all that good stuff. The homie ZENALOA. Last time he was on our show, man, we had a really cool response about that conversation. Apparently people like to hear the two of us talk to each other. That's cool. I like talking to ZENALOA for sure. I think he's a pretty deep dude, and I'm always interested in what he's thinking artistically, and I love the way that he's challenging a lot of norms that have dominated in music over the last few years. He's starting to push some boundaries. Specifically, we talk about Chicano rap and the role he plays in it and how he sees himself fitting into all of that. But nonetheless, it was a great conversation. Like I said, all season, we're giving you interviews, really cool conversations. I'm challenging myself to simply just have a cool conversation with some of the artists that you guys really like, and maybe people we can all learn stuff from. And I think the best way to do that, at least the way I've always learned, is through conversation and through insight, and really learning the story behind each person that you speak to in order to truly understand them. And ZENALOA is a dude I think you guys can learn some stuff from. Really, you know what? I can say this in the simplest way. He just has a really good attitude. You know, I asked him too if he has his downs, and he talks a little bit about that, or his dark sides. But overall, man, it seems like just a really good, positive person, and you could see that positivity working for him. Yeah, that's a solid thought. It's definitely working for him. So this is my conversation with the homie ZENALOA. Make sure you guys subscribe, turn on the alerts, all that good stuff. PlatformCollection. That's where you find us. Make sure you check out all the other shows too. I'm eventually going to have some commercials in here for the other shows and all that stuff. But we're moving. We're moving fast. I'm currently getting ready for tour right now. And make sure you come out and see us too. The Happiness to Pursuit Festival tour. I really had to think that out like that, because I was manifesting stuff as I said that. Yep, Thought Fest tour. Check it out. Curtis King, 60 East, Noah James. Psh. Seeing any of them by themselves is good. The three of them together, plus the Invisible Ponchos, me and Gene Flo, it's never even happened ever. It's never even come close to happening. The Happiness of Pursuit Festival tour. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. Yeah. But check it out. And here's my conversation with ZENALOA. All right, man. Hey, dude, well, we're just going to jump right into it, man. ZENALOA, thank you, man, for coming through, talking with us. The last time we had you on, bro, we got like a lot of dope feedback about that conversation. I saw a lot of people share it, and people were leaving comments on it about just about like really hearing like your story, and really hearing like, I think a lot of the type of person you are came through in that interview. You talked a lot about the stuff that's important to you, and the kind of artist you are on. So this being your second time on, man, I just really wanted to shoot the shit, man. Like, I think we need to kind of just dive in, see where you're at creatively. I know you got a lot going on right now. You got a tour coming up. I see you, it seems weekly. It seems like I see a flyer with your name on it constantly popping up. What's new with you? What's going on?
I mean, first and foremost, man, thanks for having me on again. It was a great conversation last time. Got the same type of feedback, and more than anything, it left me with, a lot to think about with musically, and also just what I want to do in the future. But it left me with a lot of things to think about and really put focus on. A lot of great things came from that conversation. So, thanks for having me again. And yeah, man, just been very, very busy, trying to stay busy, trying to do as many shows as possible. But getting the right shows where I'm going to be able to connect with the right people, the right audience. And then also just kind of branching out, right? Not taking what I'm comfortable with, but doing things that are kind of out of the ordinary for me. But that's just been helping me and challenge myself and, keep my focus up, but also, keep me interested in everything that I'm doing. So it's exciting every time.
What are some of those things, man? Like you said, out of the box a little bit, out of your comfort zone. Like, what are some of those things?
I mean, last time we spoke, we spent a lot of time talking about the projects, right? We're talking about what that entailed and how the process was. And I did something new, which is I spent time doing features, and I spent time getting beats that are kind of out of the ordinary for me, and themes and topics that are out of the ordinary, or maybe I haven't touched on in a long time. But it kept me focused on writing. It gave me a kind of a broader audience as well, connecting with the fans of other artists and listeners of other artists. That's a big thing. I have I think like 5 or 6 features already this year, that aren't out yet, which is super exciting to look forward to.
That's really
Another thing
cool.
has been, I just came back. I just came back from Culiacan. I did a show there. I've never really done too many shows, outside of Southern California, really, right? And this was a special one, being that it was a festival. There was a lot of artists that really put on for Culiacan and really have been doing a lot of the groundwork that you see me doing here, for that side of town. And they embraced me, they invited me. I was able to put on a really good show, and it was a very good challenge because controlling the crowd in Spanish and controlling the crowd in English, two different things, right? But now I feel ready to rock, pretty much anywhere, uh, being able to control the crowd regardless to what kind of audience I have.
That's really cool, man. Yeah, I was watching a little bit of that play out on Instagram, and that's always exciting to see. Like when an artist really starts branching out. You know, I want to talk a little bit about you. You touched a little bit about finding like the right things to do, and that's something. Me and our team, we're always talking about those kind of things too, and it's there's always that balance, right? Of like keeping the art as pure as possible, but also understanding that there is a strategy at times. There is proper steps of movement depending on what direction you're going in. Like once it starts clarifying itself, once the fans start talking more, right? Like once the fans start talking to you more, you start to understand more. What are they getting out of it? What are they understanding? For you right now, what is that? Like, what are the right things for you?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll start with what it used to be, right? Because I always, and again, it showed in our last conversation, is good music, something that I'm proud of, something that represents me, right? So that was always mainly the focus, right? But when we go into the right things, it's really about what's going to feed those particular things, right? So what's going to help me connect with others that are like me, where that's going to be welcomed, right? Where people want to hear this, and they're inviting it, into where their venue or their camp or their event, whatever it might be. Because I do a show, or I can do an open mic. It just, there's different things, but the biggest thing is that I want to make sure that there's going to be people there to receive the music and receive the words and receive the craftsmanship when it comes to this, the lyrical wordplay and all that. Doing the right things. Before, I would just be like, hey, you know what? Let me get on that show. Let me do that show. Let me do this show. And I found at times, it wasn't what was best for where my time was allotted, right? So I want to make sure that I put my time in the right place, and it's going to further everything I'm trying to do and feed all those things, right? And that's kind of been the focus nowadays.
Yeah, man, it's an always interesting pursuit and project, right? When you're really starting to define who you are, because it seems like I think all of like anyone pursuing art, right? Like uh, initially you find like a community, maybe a community of people that are within the same experience levels of, or say, or are within, within a realm of experience. And that place can become very, and we've talked about it a lot on this show, like that place can become confusing at times because there's people who sound completely different, doing completely different things, but they may be all on the same bill and all kind of competing for the attention of one particular audience. And if you're trying to do something special, or you're at least trying to, you know, like be as original to yourself as possible, sometimes that audience isn't tailor made for you. And we're always
Right.
suggesting and telling artists like, hey, the reality of this business is that you need to go out and find your own audience. You need to tend to your own audience. You need to have a conversation with your audience. And that I think is a beautiful pursuit, because to me, essentially what it does is it eliminates competition. Because it focuses on the individual and the individual's message, and how the fan individual is taking that in, as opposed to, like, like basically saying like my art is better than this art or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, I think you get it. So, I mean, I think you say it so well and you get it so much because you're an artist as well.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And I think you see that, and I've seen that because we've been in that position, right? But you're exactly right, because I think that's really what's been happening to me this last year. It's really been defined of what kind of artist I am, what I bring to the table, what you can expect from me. And I see that when I get booked, and I see that when I get the invitation, or somebody calls me to do a feature. I can tell that they already know what I'm going to bring to the table, right? And I don't worry about competition when I go to shows, because I'm very confident that there's so many variables to my music that I don't see that there's going to be somebody like me there.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like that kind of factors in. But yeah, it's finding, your community. I feel like you can get stuck there. It's a very comfortable place once you get there. And some people are very happy with being at that place. And I feel like that's probably the biggest one that gets them, where you're like, hey, I'm part of this community. This is what the scene is, and that's it. Right.
Right.
But for me, it's just how can I further it? How can I further it and help the movement advance to where we get somewhere we've never been before in our particular, kind of music, which is, again, not the most, commercialized or, marketable type of music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard a great description the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what I do. Somebody was saying that they make the kind of art that, like, if you were at a grocery store, you're not in that front aisle where there was the big signs and the cutouts, and it's like people know where to go get that imported green tea that only they know really about and only
There
a
you
few
go.
friends, but it sells out every time and it's hard to find. And that is much more of a place to, at least for me, like I feel more comfortable in that place, because like you,
That makes sense, man.
I like finding people that connect with the deeper parts of what I do, because I think part of what I do is trying to figure that out for myself. And I see that a lot in what you do. Um, do you feel like when people misunderstand what you're doing or misunderstand what you represent, what is the mistake they're usually making? Like what is the thing that you hear maybe the most?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. It happens most when they're not listening.
Mm.
You know what I mean? When they're really just taking it in um, on a surface level, right? That's where I see the most confusion, right? Because when you don't understand it, you don't understand it, right? That just kind of throws that off the table. But I see a lot of confusion when they just hear it at surface level and then begin to stereotype it to what that fits into best, right? What box does it fit in best? So, but I feel like once you start listening and you pay attention, that changes, right? That when you're really taking it in, and that was the whole point of me writing it, is that, you know, to send that message out and have somebody receive it and then also decipher it in their own way, right? That would be me saying that I got the message across, right? But I think most of the confusion comes when, for those that don't listen, right? There's a lot of individuals that we listen to music differently, right? We listen to music differently, and I feel like that kind of separates and changes a lot of things for me as an artist, and especially connecting with my listeners, because I can already tell right off the bat, what did you hear, right? Because if you just heard me rap in Spanish, right? Again, you might put me in a different box, right? But if you really heard what I'm saying and how I use the words and the vocabulary and things like that, then I know you got the point, right?
Yeah. And it's you are one of those artists, dude, that I think too that you are better consumed over a period of time because you have so much to give, right? Like you like you said, if they find you just on in Spanish, they may just assume simply just because you speak Spanish, like just because you're rapping in Spanish, they might put that in a box. But the reality is you are like this evolution of a representation in our culture that has done just that. It's evolved. It isn't just one thing anymore. It doesn't represent one area. It doesn't represent one type of person. It is what it is, in fact, like what we really are. You know what I mean? Like we're very diverse people. We're very, you know, from various backgrounds and various upbringings. And you represent something that can be initially like, if there's just a picture or a video and you got the volume off, you're like, oh, I think I've seen someone like him before. But then you hear the music and you're like, oh shit, it's deeper. I've never seen someone that looks like that, talks like this, raps like this. It's a brand new thing. And I think, do you find, or rather, I'd rather ask you, do you find that when people categorize you, like, say, as like, he's a Chicano rapper or he's a Latino rapper, do you feel like that undercuts what you do? Like what is your actual feeling on that when you hear that?
You know, and it's a complicated answer, because I was actually having a conversation, and I have this conversation a lot, right? And it's because a lot of people do want an explanation. And what I mean by that is, for example, when I go to Culiacan, right? And I just rocked a stage where I did English and Spanish, right? It's not usual that people don't understand my English, especially when I perform so much out here. It's actually more often that people don't understand the Spanish, right? People come up to me after a show and say, hey, I don't know what you were saying, but it sounded dope, right? Well, this was the opposite. And for me to explain to them, okay, you know, a lot of people are like, hey, look, you represent Culiacan. You know, were you born here? Right? And me having to, okay, look, I wasn't born here. I was born in San Bernardino. You know, we went back over there. I spent a lot of time over there. I went to school over there, a lot of family over there. I was able to grow up with a lot of values that you grew up with, right? The difference is that I eventually went back to the States and I started growing up in a different way. But those values were still instilled in me because they're values. Those don't just get, you know, thrown away. Just it builds who you are and it just forms part of you, right? So they want that kind of, you know, answer as well. Like, because like you said, when you see it and when you hear it and when you figure out that it's more deep, you want to know about it. You want to really understand how did this happen, right? Because it's not very common where you get as much of that. But I also get it, like you said, here, you know, here when they're like, hey, look, Chicano rap. And I'm gonna be honest, I used to feel a little bit different about it, right? I used to feel like it was taken away from what I did, right? I think we covered that in our last conversation, right? But since then, I've understood that instead of looking at it that way, I could look at it in a way of what I add, like what value do I add to the term Chicano rap, right? So how I feel like it's more important for me to contribute to the Chicano rap, culture, and maybe give it a different type of, view, right, or insight for different people, instead of trying to stay away from that word, right, or stay away from that category or genre, and try to make my own,
Yeah.
right, and try to fit everything I do into my own genre. So there's two sides of it, right? And again, I feel it depends on the person, because I've had somebody refer to me as Chicano rap in a way that I felt didn't acknowledge the skill set and the changes and the evolution of it. But I also have people say, hey, look, it's really cool to see Chicano rap evolving this way. And it's nice to see more happening with that. Right. So it is working. Right. So, that's how I look at it now. And it's changed from the last time we talked, but it's because of what I've seen out there and the impact I feel I can make within that whole movement. Right.
Man, that's yeah, and I think I definitely agree. Watching what you're doing, I love the fact that you're expanding the conversation. It's as a kid coming up in hip hop, like it's shit that I would have killed for that conversation to be expanded back then coming up. So like knowing that you're doing that now for future generations, and generations are going to be able to, you're basically making it okay for people, again, that look like us, that sound like us, that might have come from places that we all come from, to be as diverse as possible and still feel a part of the community and still feel part of the connection to the roots. Because at the end of the day, the conversation is being expanded daily, whether we like it or not, right? It's just that the representation of that expansion is rarely put into the forefront. It's rarely the thing that we advertise. It's usually the thing that is easiest consumable.
Yeah, you're right. And there's no fencing on hip hop, right? When we say the word hip hop, we know how broad that is, right? We
Yeah.
know that could be a lot of things, right? We know it could be, hip hop can be categorized as, some young thug, or we could be talking about Tupac, or we could be talking about J. Cole when we say the word hip hop, right? So I feel like that's the same thing that we need to understand about Chicano rap, that our generation is making a style of music, right? That only our generation can make, right? I don't feel like our children will be able to make what we make, because it's a different, right? It's a very, very different time. It's a very different, just music, society, etc. Just growing up here, first generation, going through those hardships, seeing them, right? We make a type of music that is for us, right? And other people like us are going to relate to that. This isn't music that our parents could have made. This isn't music that our kids will be able to make, right? This is for our generation. And I feel like that's why we have to include that piece in there to be able to say, look, this has been evolving. And yes, maybe it took a little longer to create that evolution or want that evolution, but we're there now. And when we say Chicano rap, you might be thinking some ZENALOA, you might be thinking some, Viva Mezcal, you might be thinking some, CNG. It doesn't matter, right? We're all part of that community, and there's no fencing around that as well, right?
Yeah, man. I think it's a beautiful thing. Let's jump around a little bit. I want to talk to you about because you are getting busier now, and you are noticing. I think that, and maybe you have to be an artist to really see it, but because I think the way the audience sees it, they probably just feel like it's a natural progression of, oh yeah, he's popular. Oh, he's getting places. Oh, he's on tour. He's doing all these different things, and maybe they're not really that familiar with what actually has to go into like manipulate those pieces and make sure that they fall into the right places. Can you give some insight on that? I know it's kind of a vague question, but I would love for you to give some insight to like artists that are like trying to start out or maybe they're like, I want to do what he's doing, but why are the answers not in some book, or why are they not on a video somewhere? Why are they,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. And you know, I'm gonna feel like the big homie or like the OG that always gave us advice when we were
Hmm.
younger, that told you, hey, don't do this, don't do that, or do this, do that, right? But you know, the reality of it is consistency, right? Like you said, this didn't happen, right? All, you know, very quickly. It took a long time, and it took a lot of, you know, failures and hardships and challenges, and getting through those, and not, you know, quitting through those, in order to get here. And yeah, you know, it's been a great year. Honestly, super blessed. Last year was amazing. So all of that has progressed immensely, right? Getting the right shows, getting the right features, getting the right feedback. That's all happening, but it all happened because of the work that came before it. And you know, I wish, like you said, I would have known this, to focus on that more than anything. To focus on, just do you. If it feels right, just keep doing it, right? Eventually, people are going to catch on, right? We all hear this, right? We've heard a lot of artists say that, but it really is the truth, right? Like, I'll give you an example of it. You know, I just dropped a reel for a song called Matches, right? This song is about, I would say it's about 10 years old,
Mm.
right? And I decided to do a video to it because I've done a video to it before, but a lot of the things I talk about are about things in Sinaloa, and I happen to be in Culiacan. So one of the homies out there that does film, he was able to help me out. We did a quick little, you know, little video, and we did the verse to that song. But a lot of people are like, man, is that song on all platforms? Is this song, you know what I mean? Even though it's such an old song, right? But that goes to show that that's how that works. You just have to stay consistent in it, because it might take somebody 10 years to like a song of yours from 10 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's all right, right? As long as it's getting to those ears now, then I have the catalog to keep pushing that music out, right? But that's a lot of the things that I've been kind of looking at when I go do shows. And I ask those questions to new artists too, like, well, what do you have out? What are you planning to have out? And I quickly realized that a lot of artists don't put a lot of music out,
Mm.
right? We do more of the posting. We're more, you know, we're more focused on the posting and the, you know, that kind of stuff that just, we think that's going to bring us popularity. But I always ask, like, when was your last album? When is your new album? And we have rappers that'll put out a single every year,
Yeah.
right? And to think that you're trying to establish a career off a single a year, but you're doing all this other extra stuff, it doesn't make sense, right? The music is first. That's the foundation of everything you're going to do after that. So stay consistent in that, and everything will start to come. And as long as you grasp it the right way when it does come, we're going to be able to build some momentum off that. But consistency is key. Keep dropping music, keep the pen sharp, keep putting it out. Don't hold on to it, but you got to create an audience.
I love I mean, that's a major gem, bro. On the releasing or repackaging music that you know is good, right? Like, because of the world that we live in and the way that people discover things now, it is very true. Like, dude, we were doing a lot of work with Tumex last year, like helping him with his brand and different stuff. And one of the things I realized was like, wow, there's literally this whole new generation that's like, oh, have you heard that new rapper Tumex? Right? Like, so just knowing that you're new to somebody always, right? Always, you're always new to somebody. Um, and not being too much in your head or too much in your ego about like, oh, well, I put that song out at a certain point and people didn't take it like I wanted to, so why put it out again? Well, because of the simple fact that change is the only constant, right? So people change, people's experiences change. You might have been, which I'm sure you've done this and I'm sure you've experienced this. You might have just been ahead of the curve when you were talking about a topic and people weren't necessarily on
Yeah.
that yet. And now they are on that.
I mean,
And it
think
can
about
be
it.
repackaged.
Somebody that's 25 right now, you know, they were 15 when I put that song out.
Yeah.
It's, You feel me? Like, and it's something I believe in. I believe in that song. So if I believe in it, I got to keep pushing it, regardless to all the outside noise. Right? Is just put it out there, and you know that that's one of the best songs when you go perform it. You know, when you show it to people, that's the one that sticks. It's one of your most popular songs on streams. Follow what you
Yeah.
see happening and give the people what they want. And I put that out there. It got the shares, it got the plays, it got everything it was supposed to do. It did, right? But more than anything is it kept that consistency. So people are still waiting for more. People are still looking at it, and it's another way for me to share. Again, I got to shoot that video in Culiacan, so it's another way for me to share and put on what I'm representing.
Yeah, man. Do you feel like when you, because dude, like honestly, like obviously we've talked, we've had these conversations. I think I've seen you a few times in person, but I at least my initial like feeling from you and vibe from you is you seem like a pretty even tempered person. But I point that out because I would love to know. I mean, if you're willing to share, like, is that true? Are you an even tempered person, or are there times where you do have like really downs? Like, are you where you're low? And if you do, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's highs and lows, man. I'm a family man, and there's a lot of responsibilities on a daily basis before I even get to open the music chapter of the day. But yeah, I mean, I face the lows, and one thing that I've always learned in my life, and facing difficulties, when I was younger, things I shared with everyone in my music, and different things like that, is just getting back up, man. Life is difficult, right? Life is hard for all of us at certain stages, but it's all about how we react to it. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a big believer in, looking looking into your own vulnerabilities and weaknesses in order to improve yourself, instead of becoming, ego driven and just looking at the things that you're doing well. I think as men, we do that because we weigh it out, and we say, hey, it's okay if I make these kinds of mistakes because I'm doing this or I'm doing this. And when you focus more on the opportunities are in order to create more strengths, being an example to my kids is super important. So that's calmed me down again. And something I'm never afraid of sharing is therapy, man. I'm a big believer in therapy. It changed my attitude towards a lot of things. And the biggest thing it did for me was being able to handle highs and lows the right way, making the most out of the best times, right? And seeing the good out of the bad times. Because a lot of the times we live in our head, right? We assume the worst. We're our own worst enemy. We're our own worst critic, right? There's a lot of sayings about what we do to ourselves, right? And I think that was the biggest thing I had to overcome as a person, to be able to make it through lows in a constructive way, right? Because we all go through them, right? But how many times have we seen people go through hard times and it's not constructive? They don't learn lessons. They actually dig themselves in deeper holes and bigger issues because we're not ready to be able to handle something like that mentally and emotionally, right? But yeah, that's how I deal with that. I do find solace in music, obviously. That's very therapeutic to me. But I always resort to the bigger picture, right? That's my theory on everything. No matter what's going on in your day, no matter what's going on in your life, work, music, etc., if you just think bigger picture, right, then you go to understand that everything's going to be okay. For me to know that I get to go home to my kids, give them a hug, give them a kiss, sit down, make some food, eat it with them, have a good time, have a conversation about our day. As long as I have that, nothing can be going too bad.
What got you to were you open initially to therapy? I'm a subscriber as well. I've talked to a lot of people on this show that found it later in their lives. Like, when the opportunity presented itself, were you all into it, or was it something you had to be convinced to do? Like, what was the process?
I mean, I started with it just like everybody else, right? I don't need it.
Mm,
I'm good. What could they tell me that I don't already know, right? Typical, right? The one who really helped me out with it was my wife, and helping me understand what the point of therapy was, right? And that changed my perspective. But I also found myself in a place in my life where I had to make changes. Uh, Biggest changes were probably just drinking, probably the amount of smoking, just the time that where I was putting my time, right?
mm,
That was my biggest thing that I wanted to kind of leave behind, especially with having kids and moving into a different stage of my life. And for me, it was understanding the thought process, right? Um, I've never had an issue with it, but I also knew that if I wanted to go out and have fun, it was a drinking thing, right? So I accepted it as a way to understand myself, and that is the biggest thing, right? The only two things that have helped me understand myself is shrooms and
mm.
therapy, right?
Yeah,
And they all work,
yeah.
and they both work in their own. They both work in their own way, right? But therapy helped me break down my own thoughts. It helped me handle my own thoughts, and I always share that with people. I never, try to keep that from anybody. I always suggest it when I see it, because there's sometimes that I see my friends or even family that I see struggling with the things I used to struggle with, right? Um, Being disciplined and being organized and the time management and just being respectful to yourself and being respectful to your family and others, and just doing the most you can with what you got. But I'll always push people when they're open to it, because I know what it did for me. And for me, it calmed me down a lot. And my stress level and my anxiety levels went way down when I was just able to handle things, right?
Mm.
I think that's the biggest issue we have is we're affected by things, whether it's one thing or another, right? And with us trying to deal with life and that at the same time, it's very hard to handle new things. And that's where we see stress. That's where we see bad reactions, bad decisions, impulsiveness, things like that. But I became a lot more relaxed. And it's funny because I grew into my name a lot more,
Hmm.
right? I grew into the Zen of my name a lot more. And, I started going to therapy when I was 28. So I was older,
Yeah.
right? But I also was at a point in my life where I said, hey, look, I've been I've been doing a lot of things, not necessarily because they make me happy, but because they get me by, right? I don't find the need for those things anymore. So let me go ahead and move on to what the next stage is of it.
That's awesome, bro. Super happy to hear that, and I'm glad that it gave you so many benefits. I do feel like, especially in Black and Brown cultures, there's always this stigma attached to therapy, and thankfully, I feel like it's dwindling down. Like, I think it has changed a lot, because I do hear more people being a little more vocal about it. But yeah, I mean, I remember watching my tios and my ninos, like, just holding shit in. You know what I mean? Like, they would just hold that shit in, and, like, and then inevitably explode, or something bad would happen. And that was just like a normal thing. Like, oh yeah, he had he got mad and this happened. And there was never any, it seemed like they were out there, like, on a boat on their own, like, really with nowhere to, like, express themselves
Mm.
or let it out. Yeah. In therapy, I've found, like, I was just talking to somebody who started their therapy, and I was like, yeah, the thing that I've gotten the most out of it, I'm like, because they're not there to solve your problems. They're literally, what a good therapist really puts things in perspective for you in a way that maybe you were missing. You know what I mean? Like, or you were letting out, or it forces you to be honest with yourself. And I think without that, yeah, you can see, especially with men, like, how that could be super toxic, and it can be very dangerous. And unfortunately, a lot of the times it is. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the times we act out at our lowest common denominator, and that a lot of times that's just violence, or physical altercation, man.
Mm.
So That's super dope that you're doing that.
It's always something negative, you know. It's and we've seen it in a lot of levels, right? There's different types of things that can affect you, and I understand it, right? I mean, they grew up in different situations.
Yeah.
You know, the fight or flight mode is activated and programmed, and I get it, right? But it wasn't for me, right? I
Right.
wasn't going to wait till I put myself in a situation where I was unhappy because I wasn't okay with being able to break through. And like you said, it was just somebody helping me understand things and me accepting to hold myself accountable for them. Right.
Yeah.
That's what I felt was the equation through the therapy. They helped me understand it. But if I wasn't going to hold myself accountable for the changes that I had to make, it was going to be ineffective. Right. But I was really in a place where, you know, and it's funny because I went from that and I reduced, you know, a lot of the things. I stopped smoking so much. I stopped drinking so much, stopped going out so much. I really found happiness in different things. And then right after that, I went into being vegan. And I feel like that was a transition for a focus.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
I had to commit to something. So like, you know, for like cold turkey, commit to something, because I never had a problem with drinking it. It's still, you know, it wasn't something I could be like, oh, I have to drink. I wasn't like that. You know what I mean? But I understood that I had to focus on something, right? And I feel like that's what I went into, and that's why, you know, for 4 years I was just committed to that. But that was kind of like I don't know, subconsciously some type of promise that I was holding to myself to be
Yeah.
able to know that I could hold a promise to myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
You
know
were
what I mean?
craving
And
that
it
discipline.
becomes interesting. Yeah, it becomes interesting in your head, you know, once you look back. But again, I could go through this whole transition and not understand myself if I didn't take the step to having somebody help me understand those things.
That's amazing, man. I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I want to jump into some questions that I had for. So we're doing. I don't know if you saw. We're going to be doing a Happiness to Pursuit Festival promotional tour coming up pretty soon. By the way, if you guys want to check that out, thoughtfest.net. ZENALOA is a past winner, somebody who's won his way onto the stage.
Yep.
There's going to be competitions in each of the cities that we stop into. I would love for you to give me maybe 2 or 3 things that you think that it takes to win something like that, especially for the artists that are, because there's a ton of people signing up for it. There's a ton of people who probably, you know, don't know what to expect. Well, what's some insight you can give them and kind of let them know, like, if you had to give advice, look, man, this is how you can win this. What would you give them?
I mean, first thing is don't second guess yourself, right? If you want to do it, go sign up, just do it, right? I decided to do it, and I got off of work and drove over there by myself and just said, let me check this out, right? I had no expectations of anything, right? Show up with your best work and prepared, right? Um, show off your originality, show what you bring to the table, why you're different, right? Because I performed one of my, you know, favorite songs to perform, Zone Out, first. But when I went to the Spanish is when I really got that reaction of, right, originality. Nobody else was rapping in Spanish that night, right? And that got me to the finals, and it got me as a winner, right? And then, you know, lastly, you know, I would say is high energy. Show them what they should expect while you're on stage that day, right? Show them what they would look like if they were to place you on that big stage, you know, that main stage, and you got an opportunity to show out like that.
There it is there, man. Again, this gentleman has won his way onto the stage. And since, I mean, I haven't seen him slow down since then. You know, to say that I too have gotten on the stage, to say that ThoughtFest doesn't act as a little bit of an injection of a steroid into your career when you get that would be wrong. So, because it definitely does. And it's a great event.
Yeah,
Again, thoughtfest.net,
and shout out to
ZENALOA was
60
a
East.
winner. Yeah, shout out to 60 East big time.
Yeah, shout out to 60 East putting it on.
Yeah, and we'll be going again. We'll be stopping in cities all around the region. So if you guys get a chance, thoughtfest.net, make sure you guys check that out. Sign up. They're signing up quick. I think San Diego, Cathedral City are already being signed up for. So check that out, dude. ZENALOA, thank you so much, man. Let's do this again, man. I want to do this often, bro. Like you're definitely someone that I vibe with, and I think that what you're doing, not just for musically, but also with the way you speak and what you're willing to share with people, it brings a lot of value, and I know a lot of people get a lot out of it. So let's make this a regular thing, man. We'll definitely check in from time to time.
Hey man, love being on this. You let me know when you need me. Always available for you, bro. Appreciate you.
Thank you, brother. You have a good one, man, and shout out to you and your family, and hope you guys have a good rest of the year.
Thank you, man. You as well. I'll see you soon.
I'm claustrophobic. I'm really trying to own it. I need some space in this place, so I can't control it. Yeah, I ain't got no room in me, guys.